Hello, English 101. Today's video is going to be on the writing process. I want you guys to know more as the writing cycle as opposed to a process. So these are the three major steps of the writing process. The first one is pre-writing, or the planning, organizing, and outlining phase when you're kind of getting your ideas together. The second part is the drafting phase, where you actually sit down, put your fingers on the keyboard, and write. And then we have the revision phase, where you go back and look for errors in proofreading or errors in idea development or organization, and look for places to improve. Now, if you can look at my cursor here, I want you to think about the process that we go through this. Yes, ordinarily we start with pre-writing, and then once we get our ideas all sorted out, we begin to draft them, and then we decide to revise them. But after we revise, where do we go? If you think about it, many times when we proofread, we're sent right back to the drafting phase of the process, where we go back to our document and check for spelling errors, grammar errors, rework some sentences. But sometimes our ideas aren't as coherent as we want them to be. Sometimes we need to reorganize the essay. So in revision, we are occasionally sent back to pre-writing. So as you guys can probably put together, we filter through this process again. So once we reach revision, is there ever a point where we stop? Well, for the purpose of our class, yes, we have final drafts, we have deadlines, the class is going to end at some point, so eventually we're going to have to turn things in and call it a final draft. But when you look at the writing process without deadlines, you notice that it's an unending cycle. We know a piece of writing can never truly be perfected, so the goal of this class, when it comes to you and the writing cycle, is for you to develop a comfortable process on your own. So we want to today look at the first phase of the writing process, which is pre-writing. The first thing we want to do is assess something called the writing context. It's made up of four pieces. The first piece it's made up of is the essay's subject. What is it about? The second piece is the audience. For who is the essay written specifically? Then we have the essay's purpose. Why do we communicate the subject to this audience? And then how should you go about accomplishing that? Last, we have the genre, which discusses what type of essay it is, and oftentimes, especially in this class, it'll be predetermined. Genre makes up things such as the length of the essay, the document design, the deadlines, as well as sort of the general objectives or goals of the assignment. So, we want to dive into the three most important parts of the writing context, which is subject, audience, and purpose. So, subject specifically is what? Let's think about the assignment for our first essay, the process narrative analysis. You might want to consider, okay, what process do you have the most experience doing? What process is the most meaningful to your life? And what is the most rewarding? When you think about those different things, it'll give you a clear idea of what subject is most appropriate for you. By going through and answering these questions, you'll get a good idea of, okay, this is a subject that's not only appropriate for the essay, but it's something that maybe I care about, something that I'm really interested in writing about, and it'll give my writing a strong tone. It'll give your writing some power, and that's a good thing. Next, we want to determine who our audience is, and determining who our audience is, we'll find out, can have an impact on our subject. We're wanting to consider first, what is the audience's level of knowledge about the subject? Do they have a real basic knowledge about it, or do they have a more advanced knowledge about it? You definitely want to ask, are they new to the subject, or if they have some level of expertise? As it says here, this determines not just where you would begin, but what tone to use. Here's an example. Say we're writing about the process of running for exercise. It's a little bit too broad. So to make it more specific, we want to consider who our audience for this essay might be. If you're writing an essay teaching people how to run for exercise, you would have to consider at what level is their knowledge of running. If your audience is people looking to get in shape, then their level of knowledge might be a little basic. But if it's experienced cross-country runners, track runners, or marathon runners, then their knowledge is going to be a little bit more advanced, and then you'll know to start at a more advanced level. Notice how this changes how you approach the subject. So if you find your subject is too broad, specifying your audience will help narrow down that subject as well. Last, we want to determine our purpose for the essay. Why should we write this essay, and how are we going to go about doing it? Some things to consider, and the most important fundamental question your essay should answer is, why is it important for the audience to understand the subject in this manner? Again, this is the question that your essay should thoroughly answer. It's the goal. Then you want to say, okay, how will I go about communicating this? We want to establish a specific purpose. If you look on page 3 of our textbook, Writer's Reference, you'll notice a big list of different purposes, all beginning with the word to. For essay 1, we will be informing, explaining, or analyzing, or as it says in our book, to inform, to explain, and to analyze. Then, once we kind of have subject, audience, and purpose picked out, we'll want to begin generating ideas. There's many different ways of generating ideas that our book lists off, a few of which are brainstorming, which is simply listing off ideas or listing off different steps of a process you're interested in writing about. Major one is clustering, and if you look at the picture here to the right that the arrow points to, you'll see an example of clustering. Note how the clustering here is about the different phases of the writing process. Free writing is just simply nonstop writing. You write about whatever is going through your head at that moment, not caring about spelling or grammar or sticking to a certain topic. The goal of free writing is to maybe come up with a few ideas that you wouldn't normally have had you not been writing in the first place. And then last is journal keeping or blogging. If you're someone who maybe likes to write down your ideas day to day, looking back on that might indicate subjects or topics of interest. Again, the main pre-writing activity we'll do in this class is generating a thesis statement and outlining. So these idea generation activities are all really up to you and are all about what you're comfortable with doing. I recommend that if you're more of a visual learner, you might consider doing the clustering, which is right here, so you can sort of see your topic laid out before you. Now, once we've figured out what we're going to write about, then we're going to want to develop our thesis statement. A thesis statement is one of the most important things you will learn in English 101 and hopefully take away from it. A thesis statement is, first and foremost, a clear and emphatic statement communicating the central idea of your essay. And here's what this includes. It includes your subject, which is what your essay is about, as we discussed, your position on that subject, and it will occasionally offer some reasoning as to why you have that position. Some other things it does is a thesis statement needs to suggest and not be simply factual. It needs to be something that's arguable or debatable. And in that vein, it needs to answer a question. It needs to be neither too narrow nor too broad. And it needs to be sharply focused with clear diction. You need to make sure that your words are clear and concrete and that your audience knows where you stand on the issue. Once we get done with our thesis statement, we'll want to go ahead and begin outlining. Remember, outlines are 10 out of the 100 points for your essay, so developing a good outline is important over the course of the class. We obviously want to ensure that our writing is logical and progresses properly. Outlining helps us nail down our organization for the essay. As you've probably read in our assigned reading for this, there are two types of outlines that our book talks about. Informal is simply putting your working thesis or your thesis in development down on the page, and then talking about the general steps or the main points that your essay will cover. We want to get around to doing this more formal outline. This is what I'm looking for. We'll want to have a firmly established thesis at that point, and then not only will we discuss our major steps or main points, but we'll talk about the minor steps that occur within that major step. We'll add some narrative from our life experience, and then we'll add some analysis of that narrative. So it goes into a lot more what's going to be contained within each main point. This has been our video on the writing cycle. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me, rran0001@kctcs.edu. Thank you.